Okay, we are recording. So without further ado, welcome to the call. So before we go any further, the first thing I want to mention, just as part of the call, is that we have a code of conduct. So this is pretty standard, I think, in most open projects. The main idea is that we want to make sure that everyone is treated well and feels respected and happy within the group and within the call. So I doubt there are going to be any issues, but if there are for any reason, we have contacts on the agenda, and you can also read through the code of conduct. And we have, a couple of new faces, so I'm just going to very quickly run through what InterMine is and why we run our outreach calls, just very quickly, elevator pitch style, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So InterMine effectively is a biological database that is open source. We take a bunch of different biological data files, we glue them together, and we make it easy for those to be queried rather. Now that can be, if you're a programmer, you can do that using an API, or if you prefer to use a user interface like a website, you can do it that way as well. And because it is open source, the InterMines that exist are not just ones that are run by Cambridge, but also other places. So people take the InterMine source code and they run it in all sorts of different places in the world for all sorts of different organisms. So HumanMine and FlyMine are in Cambridge, and all of the other InterMines, there's more than 30 of them, are run by other people. And the reason that we run these calls is primarily when you have a big open tool like this, you are likely to have people using it, and there's going to be a community around it. And since there's a lot of different people all running InterMines, we want to make sure that it's easy to communicate with people and to just share our tips around reaching your community and working with your users and generally making your open source scientific tools better. So I'm going to run through a few quick things that are InterMine updates, and then we also have two awesome speakers that I'm really looking forward to today. So the first thing that I'm going to be mentioning, and I've just realized I'm saying a lot, and I really don't like that, but please ignore. So Google Summer of Code, that's one of the awesome community things that's going on at the minute. Summer in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, but we have 6 students who will be working with us over the next 3 months, working on InterMine-related projects. So one of those is putting InterMine on the cloud. Right now, you have to be a software developer to create an InterMine, but we are trying to make it easy enough that you can drag and drop some of your files and create your own InterMine to allow you to do various bits of data analysis without having to be a programmer. So one of our projects is to help us get that further on the cloud and easy to use. Another project is this upgrading IMJS and IM tables, which basically means making our results tables easier to use and easier to update. We have one student working on a schema validator for biological data. Prabodh is working on migrating InterMine from structs to Spring, basically some back-end technical guts. And another student is working on data visualizations, which is really exciting. I think we've already got 2 or 3 that he's created, so by the end of the summer, it feels like we'll have hundreds. That's probably a bit optimistic, but it's really useful. And the final summer project that we have is the InterMine single sign-in. So the idea might be, as a pilot, to see whether we can have it so that you can sign into any InterMine once, rather than having to have a different account for every InterMine that's out there, for anyone who does analysis across the various different InterMines that we have. So those are all really exciting, and we will be providing updates through Twitter and through our blog over the next few months as to how the progress is going. Massive thank you to all the students who are working with us. Another massive thank you that I wanted to throw out there is also for the people who are helping mentor the summer projects. So we have a couple of returning students, or people who were students last year, but this year are working as mentors. So that's Aranan and Aman. We also have Nadia and Sam, who aren't mentoring this time, but did help us through the recruitment process, evaluating and communicating with students. And we couldn't be doing this without you all, so thank you very, very much for that. And that's all I have for the Google Summer of Code updates. So Emmy, it's over to you.
All right. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. I'm just going to share my screen now. Hopefully this will work. I think it's this one. Just switch to the other tab. Sorry, I'm still figuring out this.
Okay, we can see your screen.
Yeah, just switching tabs. Finding a way to switch tabs.
Oh, actually, while you're doing that, I should have given you a bit of an introduction. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So now we have Emmy Tsang speaking. Emmy is eLife, the publisher's innovation community manager, and I've only known her for, well, is it 3 months or so? But it's been really fantastic so far, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about your reproducible document stack and the eLife sprint. So again, back over to you.
Thank you, Yo. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk, and thanks for being here. Yeah, as Yo said, my name is Emmy, and I've been the Innovation Community Manager at eLife for about 4 months now. Before eLife, I was doing a PhD in neuroscience at MBOL, where Malvika is. So this world is really small. So for those of you who don't know, eLife is primarily a journal. So we publish what we think are pretty good papers in the life sciences, from neuroscience to developmental biology to cancer immunology. But what's really attractive to me and to many others in the community, I feel, is that eLife is an ongoing publishing experiment. So what I mean by that is, unlike maybe more traditional journals, we like to try things out, primarily with the aim to fix the current pain points in consuming and publishing papers. So papers are the primary means through which scientists communicate and share our research findings. But if you are a researcher, I think you will agree that papers are rather difficult to find and read, and even more difficult to write and publish. eLife is constantly asking questions and experimenting with different steps of the process. For example, peer review and production, to see if we can make our interactions with papers easier and better. At the moment, so we have 2 major methods for our experiments, which are open source technological innovation and community building. So I'm going to tell you about 2 very exciting projects that I'm part of. The first one is called the Reproducible Document Stack. So with this experiment, we're hoping to see how we can make research more reusable and reproducible. So I'm going to go straight into what we think is a good solution. It's what we are calling a reproducible document, which encapsulates executable code and executable and usable code and data within the flow of a manuscript. You can go to this link now on your terminal, or anytime you want later. I think I put the link in the Google Doc, but I've got it open here. If I can, again, switch my tab. So if you go to the link, this is what you will see. This is a paper published by Tim Arrington. It's like any other paper on eLife, except when you go to some of the figures, you can see this little blue button here that says R script. And if you click that, you should be able to see the code that is underlying the figure. So what's more is that you can actually change this code and rerun it. So I'm hoping this works now, because sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it's fine. So I personally really don't like bar plots. So I'm just going to try and change this to a dot plot. I'm going to comment out the error bars as well. And then if I rerun this, hopefully it will do something. It takes a while. Let's just check this. Okay, it's ready. Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't, but I mean, it should, so ideally, yeah, I got it right. Yeah, sometimes it's a bit temperamental, because it's obviously still a demo and the technology is a bit strange. But yeah, I hope you can try this at home. You can play around with it. People have changed colors. Yeah, and it's a fantastic way to, we are trying to, with this, we're trying to encourage scientists to reuse other people's papers, data, and hope that we can make research a bit more reproducible. So this demo was published in February, and we got quite a lot of attention for that. There were people emailing us asking if we can publish their papers as reproducible documents. And we really want to do that. And so for that, we need to build a stack of tools that will allow researchers to author their manuscripts with their code and data embedded, tools that will host these articles and set up the reproducible execution environments, and tools for us and any other publishers to accept and publish these reproducible articles at scale. We also want to make sure that scientists don't have to learn to use a lot of new tools or entirely change their habits to be able to author these reproducible articles, and the same goes to the publishers. So in other words, we really want these tools to be interoperable with existing tools like the Jupyter Notebook, for example, which is fantastic, or Google Doc if you're not a coder. So it's quite a lot of work, but we're hoping to start accepting and publishing these document archives with the manuscript, the code, and the data by the end of this year. So fortunately, we're not alone. So for the Reproducible Document Stack project, we're partnering with two fantastic open source organizations, Substance and Stencilla, who are developing the main code base and backend infrastructure for all of these tools. And we realized with this and many other of our projects that first, we cannot do all of this work on our own. And second, there are many other people and communities working on similar projects for similar goals. And hence, it's just much better if we all work together and build on top of each other's work. And this is why we're committed to developing everything openly and with open source. So the RDS reuses and builds on technologies from the Binder project, Docker, and Kubernetes. The code base is entirely on GitHub, mostly on the Stencilla GitHub repos. So you are more than welcome to check them out and to contribute to documentation or its development. We're also running a reproducibility themed open source community call in just over 2 weeks. So it's a call with an open agenda for anyone who wants, who is working on open source projects related to reproducibility, to share their progress and to get feedback. So please feel free to join us if you have some time and are interested. So I hope I've managed to convince you that eLife is a huge experiment trying to answer all sorts of interesting questions in the space of research communication and developing different solutions. It's not limited to the kind of 40-ish people now that we have in the eLife offices, but also our collaborators, editors, ambassadors, early career researchers, and practically anyone who has access to the internet and a GitHub account. The experiment itself has really benefited from the diversity of thoughts and perspective within the community that has come up with some spectacular solutions and products. And so one question that we ask ourselves is, how can we accelerate collaboration within the community and between all of these people? What would happen if we bring everyone into one same space? So this idea gave birth to the eLife Innovation Sprint. This is a collaborative event where we bring together open source developers, designers, and researchers. And for 2 days, they work on developing prototypes for open science and for improving the ways we share and consume research. This is actually the second iteration of the sprint already. The first one was so incredible that we just couldn't wait to do it again. So last year, the participants worked on, for example, Plotted, a tool that is similar to like a like button for research papers that are linked to DOIs and ORCIDs. Octopus, where we try to reimagine a system to share research output from scratch. And Pre-Review, a movement to encourage collaborative preprint reviewing, and many other projects. It was super fun. So this year's sprint is happening in September, still here in Cambridge. Applications are open at the moment until Sunday, and you can go to this website to find out more and apply. I'd really love to see someone take the InterMine APIs there and work on it. It's free to participate, and if you know someone who may be interested but don't have the funding to travel to Cambridge, please let them know that we're trying our best to provide travel support, so apply anyway. I've got a slightly odd request here as well. I'm looking for 2 to 3 female open source software developers or web developers to help review some of the applications we've got. This is an attempt to try to gender balance our review committee. So if you're not applying to the sprint, but would still like to contribute to it and have something like 2 hours to spare in the next 2 weeks, please get in touch with me. My email is here on screen. I'm happy to share some sprint swag and good vibes in return. So thank you, that's all from me. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Awesome, thank you so much, Emmy. So that was really exciting to hear about, and I'm gutted that I cannot apply to the eLife sprint because I'm not going to be in the country.
Next year, hopefully we'll have another one.
Hopefully so. If anyone has any questions that you, also if you'd rather not speak out, you can also type in the document. We are partway down page 3 is where Emmy's section is, if you want to add any. There's some free bullet points there. And I will leave a few moments of awkward silence to see if anyone wants to speak up.
Well, I think I have a question. It's a little bit ill-formed, but so one thing that we struggle with, I guess, a bit. So I manage a biological database. It happens to be in the agricultural sector. Mm-hmm. And one thing that is difficult for us is to go to the supplementary materials associated with a paper and deal with how they formatted their Excel spreadsheets to try to pull out the information that's relevant that we might want to import into, say, our InterMine. And it seems as though, in some way, this idea of having the data bundled into the publication in a way that is structured enough to allow that sort of computation should make that type of thing more feasible. I mean, if there were clearer standards for how to package certain types of data, say a GWAS analysis or something like that. So how do you see your efforts in terms of the reproducible document stack as connecting with the world of biological databases?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, it's actually not ill-formed. It's very, very clear, and it's something that's constantly on my mind. I think for now, we've developed this sort of what we call a minimal viable product simply based on very small sets of data. So meaning things that can be stored in CSVs, probably a couple of gigabytes. We've not got to the point where we can actually integrate big sets of data, unless I guess if you have, for example, like InterMine, then you have an R API client, which you can then install via R code blocks onto the reproducible environment itself. So this is one way that it could work, but it needs to be that sort of infrastructure with the API client. So this is one way. I guess this is also the way that a lot of similar approaches have dealt with this sort of problems. But yeah, I think what we want as eLife, what we want to do in the next year is simply to be able to say, look, we can publish these articles with this sort of data, and then we are waiting for people maybe from the database or have a good knowledge of both sets of technology to come in and say, look, this is the way that we can actually join it and allow researchers to publish, I don't know, big, huge terabytes of sequencing data or something like this. Yeah, it's an ongoing question. We don't have a clear answer. We're hoping that someone would get there at the same time we're trying to work on the publishing backends and stuff like this.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I could imagine it being very interesting too for somebody reading the paper to be able to kind of look at what's being presented in the paper in the context of the data available from a mine or something like that. To, you know, not just see what they're telling you, but also see how it compares to other published results somehow through magic.
So you mean like if someone can visualize, let's say, database results and then have that side by side with some published results from some other, that would be interesting. I wonder. I really don't have a solution top of my mind. Like, I guess linking different publications together is still a big challenge. Right now, most of what we do is citation, which is literally nothing. It's not really a bridge type of interaction. So I'd love to see a solution on that as well. It'd be nice to be able to, for example, at least cite the figure or the data in question, and then, have some sort of, I don't know, API built around it, and hope that all these things are interoperable and can interact with each other. The world of data is so diverse as well. You really need a kind of common protocol to be able to make sure that they can work with each other, even if new sort of data types or formats arise. See what I mean? We haven't got a clear solution, kind of vision on that as well. But that's why we need ideas.
So if we have ideas, should these be pitched at the sprint?
Yes, definitely. I mean, last year, like a lot. Actually, on this note, the fact that the RDS demo managed to happen in February was largely thanks to the sprint. So the sprint combined the Stenciller authoring interface with binder infrastructures. And it was three people working together for 2 days. And that happened, and more work after that, of course, but that started there. And that enabled us to put up the demo. So really, like, it was a very, very productive occasion, and I hope the same for this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a related question to follow on from that, which is, can you explain to us, sorry, this is Cosmical, hi Emmy, can you explain in the example that you showed us, where is the data? So to make an interactive publication like that, where does the data reside? Because I think at one point I tried out one of these publications. It definitely got my Mac very hot rerunning the figures. And I'm interested to know how that exists at the moment and how you think that might change in the future.
So that was the elephant in the room for this whole kind of reproducible technology in publishing, because the data needs to sit somewhere, the execution environment needs to sit somewhere, and someone needs to pay for the compute. And so right now, for this demo, everything is sitting on the eLife GitHub and the Stenciller GitHub. Yes, I think the actual data itself is sitting on the Stenciller GitHub. And it's this very simple CSV file. And for the next phase of the project, to scale this up, we actually, Stenciller is going to provide the reproducible execution services, and they are offering it to us as a service, an SLA, so a service provider, basically. So we kind of rent this service from them. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but basically they're building a technology stack that is similar to the Binder Hub, if you're familiar.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, but they are optimizing it for the publisher's use case, and they will be hosting at least the first of our reproducible documents and all the accompanying data and code and manuscripts.
Carpena, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I saw your hand going up, but never mind.
So yes, thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. So,
Okay. Any other questions, anyone? Let me check the agenda doc. Nothing else added.
yeah. I mean, I will be looking at this doc, and feel free to email me or tweet at me or anything. We also have a blog post on all of the things that I just talked about, and so you can actually go there and annotate on it.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much, Emmy. That was really interesting.
Thanks a
Sounds
lot.
quite exciting.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we are going to move on to our next speaker. So Malvika, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay, so I will give a quick demo while you are setting, not demo, introduction, while you are setting up the screen share. So Malvika Sharan is, let me see if I can get this right, you are a Software Sustainability Institute Fellow this year. You're very active in the carpentries and you work at Emble, is that right?
Perfect.
Okay, I'll hand it over to you. Malvika's talking about inclusiveness in science.
I'm gonna start my timer because I'm not sure how long I'll talk. So hi everyone, as you'll kindly introduced me, I'm Malvika Sharan. I'm a computational biologist and community outreach coordinator, and I'll share about my work with you, keeping inclusiveness in open science in the center of my talk. And because you all are working in tech spaces, I'll try to bring examples from tech spaces which is relevant. So about me, I'm working in European Molecular Biology Laboratory at Emble. It's not relevant what my PhD is in, but this is where I actually got introduced to open science and a lot of other topics around it. I've been working for past 9 years in bioinformatics field, and 4 years, in last 4 years, I've been teaching a lot of computational skills and outreach related ideas. And currently I'm working full-time in community outreach and training. I'm in Italy, so it's very sunny, so you'll see my face shining a lot. So I'm from India. I moved to Germany 10 years ago for a sense of global scientific community. I was interested in science. I wanted to come to Germany to learn bioinformatics and have better opportunities for jobs and employment. But what I didn't realize back then, that I wasn't just moving from a developing country to developed country. I was gaining privileges, and the privileges meant as simple as access to journals, access to infrastructure, funding, opportunities to go to conferences, and basically sit down for a few hours of my PhD every month and philosophize life and get paid for it. So what I thought was a global scientific idea, I also understood that there is a lack of globalness. And the reason why I'm saying that there is lack of globalness is that even though we understand that science and engineering is important all over, the research focus around the world is quite different. There are technical exchanges requirement to facilitate advancement of technology. And that's why we are developing tools and sharing data. But this is still inaccessible for those who cannot use our data and tools. We understand that inclusion of diverse skills, background, and experiences are important to impact outcome positively, but we don't really understand how to design inclusive technology. At the end, we also understand that training is important for someone to use my technical solution, but because we're not offering it, it is not really useful for everybody. So how can we actually think about improving this globalness? So if we're thinking about science and engineering, we should try to address more than just one single problem. When we think about technical exchanges, we should think about how are the resources available for everyone? Can I reduce the requirement of expensive resources so it could be useful for more people? And when we're thinking about diversity, we can think about designing inclusive technology. For example, can we include certain feature where it could be useful for people with disabilities? And we should think about improving training opportunity to build wider user, learner, and contributor base. So open science was a place where I found compromise for all these. Open science means making research resources available online without price barrier and without most permission barrier. Open science is an umbrella term. It includes information such as open access, open data, open source, peer review, notebooks, and so on. So where does inclusiveness fit in here? So inclusiveness stands for inclusion of individual or groups who were previously excluded. It is measured in terms of eligibility, opportunity, and involvement at the leadership level. And it is achieved when members are not competing for resources or power, but supporting each other. So I understand a lot of you have heard a lot about diversity and inclusion, and inclusiveness might be something on the top. I'll tell you why I actually use it, but before that, some jargon busting. So diversity and inclusion, they go hand in hand. Diversity is about attracting different people of diverse skills, background, and experiences to work together. And inclusion is about empowering them by providing an environment that brings the best of the combined skills, background, and experience they all have. So what does inclusion versus inclusiveness mean is that inclusion is a process by which a community values and involves diversity in improving well-being, whereas inclusiveness is an outcome of inclusive policies undertaken in the diverse communities. Inclusion aims towards providing access to community resources, whereas inclusiveness means that it's an aim towards achieving diversity and heterogeneity at the leadership level and decision makers who would make sure that everybody gets heard, all the stakeholders, including those who were previously excluded, are involved. And this is the reason why I like to use inclusiveness, because it, in its heart, holds diversity, at the same time involving them actively and not just keeping them as faces of different background and ethnicity. So how are these affecting tech spaces? So there are several studies done, and this particular study comes from Silicon Valley, which says that diverse teams embrace inclusive decision-making, and it is important for positive outcome. And there are many efforts which are being made. For example, people in Silicon Valley who have international workers, they have in past years increased the amount of people they recruit from different backgrounds and different genders. But when you talk to those individuals, they don't really think that their effort is actually making any effort, any progress. And furthermore, they also think that it is not even required. So what you're looking at on the right side is different diversity measures and amount of people who think that these are not really required for the improvement. So what we witness is that there is lack of individual effort, which is affecting overall inclusiveness. So thinking about where you're working in research and development, we are making a lot of effort in democratizing accessibility and engagement, but it can't assure that it will happen. In fact, it is inaccessible and unwelcoming to many, both who experience it and who can change it. So put it in a simple term, I like this tweet by Christy, which says it's just not about choosing the right license and putting code on GitHub, but it's about actually improving accessibility and bringing people in and making decisions. So going back to the slide that I showed you in the beginning. So these two first points, science and engineering and technical exchanges, which I'm sure you all are really, really good at. And I will be sharing ideas about the last 2 points, which is inclusion of diversity and training opportunity, which I hope can give you a little bit an idea in how you can make your work a little bit more inclusive. So a few examples from my work. I work in EMBL. It's a flagship in Europe and serves as a model for other research institutes. It's made of 26 European countries and associate members all around the world. So the project that I'm working on is called BioIT. It's a community platform which fosters bioinformation. So Toby Hodges is my project partner, and we work on 4 main areas. So primary is our training, where we try to make sure that people who do not have computational skills will come in and learn from us. And we also try to offer bioinformatics research resources to them, and create a lot of opportunities for people to exchange ideas, and make sure that those who are not already involved in the community are coming in and working with us. So I'm also a deputy training coordinator of Elixir Germany, and this gives me an opportunity to open my EMBL resources to people externally. So Elixir is a training network in Europe, which aims to provide bioinformatics infrastructure and training all around in Europe. Therefore, whatever course I'm organizing, or whatever event I'm organizing, I'm making sure that this is open for people from outside. And we're also trying to develop strategies for community engagement and equity. So we provide introductory to advanced skill courses. What you're looking at in the bar chart here, the green one is what we offer within EMBL for the EMBL employees. The orange one are the courses which are open for everyone, and the blue ones are which is offered by Elixir alone. So over the period, I joined in 2016. That's when I started to work on this idea, and we started to expand it to a point where it just makes sense that there is nothing that we need to have specifically for EMBL. And we also try to involve our volunteers in teaching and gaining experience and improving their visibility externally and internally. So other diversity and inclusion efforts are task force meeting with volunteers. These volunteers come in and tell us what kind of resources they require and how they can offer it to others. Then we also do a lot of community assessment in order to understand the needs of other people in the community. Then we have computational capacity assessment in order to understand where people are lacking. We do a lot of social events, regular drop-in sessions. We sit down with individuals to have coffees and talk to them. And then we have final, every year, annual barbecue and hackathon to build something together. So we also involve with local communities beyond EMBL in order to connect with others in the city. So I'll give you 4 small examples of other organizations that I'm associated with, which you can also involve with if you get interested in any of these things that I'm talking about. So first is Carpentries. It's a volunteer-driven organization that teaches computational skills to people. They are made of software carpentry, which teaches the basic building block of software development, data carpentry, the skills that's required to work with open access data, and library carpentry for library professionals. We are all around the world. All these people are volunteer all around the world who like to teach, maintain course material, develop new course material, and offer workshops. And by now, the Carpentries has taught over 37,000 learners how to code. I also co-organized CarpentryCon, the first conference where we invited 125 international members. And this was a really pleasurable event where everybody really felt that they belonged in the community and they wanted to help each other. So if you're interested, you can join as trainer, mentor, mentee, developer. If you're interested in code of conduct, we're very happy to have you on board. Then about Mozilla Open Leaders, I think they're not offering it as individual, but they have just opened a call for starting your own open leadership course. So check them out. So when I was working with them, I started this project called Digital Storytelling for Shaping Culture. And the reason that I did it because in my community, I could see that there is lack of diversity and I wanted to understand what I can do to bring these people in. And the only way that actually worked out was sitting with them and asking them is why don't they feel involved in technical topics and how they can help. So I'll try to wrap this up. And as Yo said, I'm a current SSI fellow And I'm trying to develop accessible training strategies for smaller communities. And this is the reason why I'm in Italy today. I think Yo is going to tell you about this, but I have to share about BOSC. BOSC has been my home since my PhD because it just makes all the isolated bioinformatician very appreciated. It's a really, really great opportunity for people to exchange ideas. So if you're coming to ISMB, definitely attend this. So few final points that you should take out from it is that when you are going to work into your project, please design inclusive solution by inviting diverse perspective. And these diverse perspective can come from collaborators or external communities. Actively share your work with others by creating tools, teaching a skill, running coding club. Do as little as you can, but make sure that you have this in your conscious. And be an ally. Please learn about being an ally from Valerie Aurora. I'll not put a lot of effort into it, but this is something that anybody can use their societal privilege to step up for others. And finally, shape the culture by engaging with your community in whatever way you can. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Malvika. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, there is a space. You can add your own question in the document if you wish. Oh, I can hear someone typing. Okay, while we're waiting, actually, one thing that I thought you should mention, actually, you're running a Birds of Feather at BOSC this year, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm running a Birds of Feather on actionable ways to improve diversity in your community. And we are doing it from ISMB Diversity and Equity Task Force. At the same time, some members are also running a Bird of Feather on Code of Conduct for ISMB, which is going to be very useful to get multiple perspective.
I think I had the very bad grace to inadvertently book an InterMine Birds of Feather at exactly the same time as the one that you're running on the 24th. But no, I definitely think that would be a good one to be attending as well. Cool. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, Emmy, how do we facilitate a welcoming, inclusive diversity discussion?
I can elaborate on that. Yeah. So thanks so much, Malvika. That was really inspiring and so relevant in many, many ways. Yeah, I agree with you completely that inclusiveness is something that, it's difficult. It's something that is both easy and difficult to talk about, because people now understand that I guess, like, at least in the communities that I work with, is a very important topic, and difficult in the sense that everyone has such different definitions and understanding of it on many different levels, and people are almost unwilling to admit that I myself is very new to the conversation, and sometimes I find it difficult to acknowledge how little I know about it. And I see a lot of people around me having the same problem. It's like, there's a couple of people maybe in the room that will know a lot and somehow, have this somehow manage to scare everyone away from the conversations. And then there's this stigma of the whole thing being a bomb. So if you say something wrong, then it immediately becomes like everyone just kind of looks down at you, and it becomes very stagnant, the conversation itself. So I'm just wondering if you have any experience in sort of facilitating a healthy discussion around this topic and trying to, educate people in a way, or at least bring people up to the same page when you're trying to maybe make some decisions or strategy. I hope that's kind of clear.
Yeah, no, it's a very relevant topic. Every time I go on stage and talk to people about it, I'm scared. I was scared today too. It's not an easy thing to talk about, mostly because you are afraid of saying something wrong. So what I have learned is when you go into these conversations, make sure that these conversations are not a place for complaint, because everybody has experienced something which is difficult. Be aware that everyone has something to share. But when you're conducting such event, have an agenda. What are you going to achieve at the end of this event? It shouldn't be a collection of complaints. It should be a collection of what I faced and how I overcome it, or how. One example I can give you was 3 years ago, I ran a similar conversation in ISMB and we didn't have agenda. And what I ended up with is a list of complaints, and I did not know how to address those. But then we started to change it and say, okay, we all know everybody has problem. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what have you done that addressed some issues around creating a welcoming space, inclusive and diversity discussion. So some of the topics that could be relevant to think about is in your tech space, or if in your project, how you're trying to employ this. So you can start a conversation by saying, okay, I'm designing my project and I'm making sure that the font that I'm using is visible for everyone, that I'm not using a color which is bad. So that's a good start. And then people know that you're interested in talking about this topic related to publication or related to software designing. It's very important to have focus of where you're gonna get this discussion directed.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Thank you.
I can send you some more list that I have saved for myself. So if you're interested, I can share with you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to check if anyone's got more questions so I don't take up everyone's time, but feel free to interrupt. Yeah, so basically it's relevant because we are trying to start this conversation at eLife about the sprint in particular on kind of our participants' compositions, and it's been tricky so far, so I'm happy and glad for any tips.
Well, I'm a little curious about whether, I won't claim much knowledge about this subject, but you hear a lot about the tech industry in general having serious problems with diversity. But I wonder if in our somewhat limited sphere of tech, which I consider to be sort of the biological community, are the dynamics similar, or are they a little bit different? It seems as though biologists sort of ought to have an appreciation of diversity at some level to begin with.
I agree. I think in experimental field, there is less of an issue of diversity. However, it's similar at the leadership level, in professorship level, or on decision-making level. We do lack diversity. And I think it's really beyond just having male and female working in the industry, but backgrounds, people from different countries. They're absolutely lacking. One example I know is from RSG, which is a student council for ISMB. And they didn't have for a long time anybody from Latin America, for example, to represent anyone. And at the moment, they're really desperately looking for people from Africa because there is lack of representation. So there are still, they want decision makers to be more diverse, to have actual influence.
Yeah, I think that's, it seems like perhaps the dimensions of diversity may be different in different areas, and you might have different problems. I know in our work with plant breeders coming from Africa, it's always kind of shocking at the issues around just internet access that people have there, and some of the tools that we're developing they can't be used if they're not standalone, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah. So if I can also comment on what you just said, I did not notice how much we take our resources for granted because we have them so easily available until I was teaching in Argentina last year, where you don't really get one single room booked for 2 days. You have to, if you're teaching for 2 days, you have to be sure that you're going to move around, and you have to be okay with it. Nobody complains. If I do that in my institute, people would not like it probably, because we are so used to having things. And internet was also a great issue in a lot of countries that I have taught in. And therefore, we're trying to build training materials which don't depend on internet so much, because it doesn't have to. It's just easy for us not to have data in hand because we can download it. But it's, as you said, it's not easy everywhere.
Okay, cool. I think we have comfortably come to a natural end there, unless anyone else had any other comments, questions. Okay, I'm going to assume no. So we have a few short minutes before I'd like to wrap up. So there's just a few InterMine related updates I'd like to run through. Oh, and also massive thank you so much, Malvika. That was really, really interesting. So thank you so much. I'll move on to the InterMine updates. So we have a few things coming up. If anyone is in the Cambridge area on June 19th, we have some training for InterMine. This is a 2-part training course. In the morning, we are teaching people to use the websites for data analysis. And then in the afternoon, once you've gotten familiar with how InterMine works, we are also looking at the API. So basic programming, looking towards a data analysis for integrated data sources. In July, at the start of July, both myself and a colleague will be at the Galaxy Community Conference, again, doing some InterMine API training, but also just doing the best to learn as much as we can about Galaxy. So if anyone's there, please come by and say hi. BOSC, which I think we've also mentioned quite a bit, there will be several of us there. We are presenting a poster, and Sergio will be giving a talk. And then there's also Birds of Feather meeting. So on the 24th at 12:45, we don't have a location determined yet, but we're hoping just to be a friendly, casual InterMine related chat. If anyone from InterMine or who works on InterMine who is interested in an InterMine would like to come and say hi. So this will be very loosely structured, and you can bring your lunch as well. Looking a long way forward in the future, we ask every year whether or not we should go to PAG because it's in the United States. And one thing that we do quite often is we ask people who are in the InterMine community to give a talk on our behalf, which we can support and send things like stickers and swag and InterMine cards and things on over. So if anyone's interested in that, then please let us know. Moving on, we have some staffing updates. So our team has expanded. We have 2 new staff members. We have Adrian, who was actually a Google Summer of Code student last year. He now works full-time with us. He works embedded in a startup, but he's with us, I think, one day every other week. And he can contribute to a little degree to InterMine Core, but a lot of the time he's working on the startup. And then we also have Kevin, who started 3 days ago, who is also working on in the same role as me with Blue Jeans, which is the new user interface for InterMine. So that's really exciting. And finally, we have a summer intern who is also working with us, Nukur. She was another Google Summer of Code student from last year, so it's really exciting. I think out of our 6 students last year, 5 have come back in one form or another. So I think GSOC, Google Summer of Code, as a form of community engagement is doing really fantastically at the minute. And finally, we have a mailing list. So if you're interested in these calls, then I send out a reminder to our community outreach mailing list. This is towards the final page, page 5 of 6, but there's nothing on page 6 of 6, so it's the final page. And if anyone has any suggestions for speakers, maybe someone you spotted that you think has something interesting to do with open source, open science, or community building, then we'd love to hear that. Or also someone who's done interesting InterMine related things that you might like to highlight or spotlight. And that can be yourself. If you think, hey, I have something exciting that I'd like to share, then let me know. Or if you think that you want to try and get someone to talk, I'm willing to try and contact them on your behalf to get them to speak at the next call. And And the next InterMine call will be for, if you're an InterMine software developer, the next one is 1st of August. If you are interested in watching our Summer of Code final presentations, when you see what they've been working on, that's the 15th of August. But the next community outreach call will be on the 5th of September, and we are definitely still taking nominations for speakers for that. I think that's everything I had for the minute. So thank you so much, especially Emmy and Malvika for your fantastic presentations, and everyone else who pitched in with questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so see you all later, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Yo.
Yes.